through your journey, being a
Yeah.
skier and then working with your mentors, how it mentally prepared you and made you so strong, that you were able to, bounce back so quickly in such a wonderful
Yes.
way.
Well, thank you. I don't think you could be any more spot on with that with that thought because at the time, like I said, I was a bit resentful towards my coaches because I was, yeah, 15 to 20 years old, and I didn't want to be, if I didn't show up at the exact time I was supposed to, it was going to mean either I was hiking the mountain or doing burpees. There was some sort of consequence for not showing up when I said I was going to. Or if my coaches could tell that I wasn't listening to them, they were keeping me accountable, and they were ensuring that I was going to grow into the best version of myself as an athlete at the time. And I definitely did not have the foresight to understand that they were giving me an invaluable life lesson.
This is the Real Estate Vibe Show, and I'm your host, Venki Loomba. I'm a real estate investor and a fund manager. And on this show, we go beyond the basics to uncover real strategies, real stories, and real opportunities to help you build wealth through the real estate. And today, I have a very special guest with me, Athena Brownson. Welcome, Athena, to the Real Estate Vibe Show.
Binky, thank you so much for having me. It's already been a pleasure just starting to speak with you, and I'm a very big fan of your podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm super excited to hear your story. Oh my God. I was just like, oh wow, when you were sharing with me earlier.
It's
So
been a journey.
yeah, it has been a journey, seriously, and I think everybody will love to hear that. So a little bit about Athena. She's a former professional skier turned entrepreneur and resilience advocate. After overcoming chronic Lyme disease and multiple surgeries, she has become a powerful voice on turning adversity into purpose. Today, she empowers others to align their life and career with their values and build strength through every setback. We'll be discussing today resilience is your superpower, and I agree 100% on that. True success is not about never falling, it's about how you rise after the fall. What keeps you going when life knocks you down? In this episode, we'll explore how and why your purpose, your mission, your reason for getting back up is the secret fuel behind the real resilience. By aligning with your deeper purpose, you can turn your setbacks into comebacks and challenges into unstoppable growth. And let's dig into today's show, and let's start with the heart of it. What does knowing your why really mean to you, Athena?
Well, first of all, thank you for that beautiful introduction. You articulated more beautifully than I ever could have. So thank you. Now, really, when I look at resilience and when I look at, what your why is and finding your why, I think it's a continuous journey that we go on throughout our entire lives. However, for me, finding real estate was, honestly, as corny as that may sound, it became my why, because forming lifelong relationships with people while they're making the biggest investment, whether it's buying, selling, investing, developing, of their life, that is an intimate experience that you, as a trusted advisor, get to walk alongside your clients on with. And honestly, being able to do that has been the reason that I have been able to get out of bed when my body is completely shutting down and when nothing seems to feel like it's working. And we'll get into that. But I truly believe that your why continually evolves. My why has been helping my clients and forming those incredible relationships with my clients.
I love that. I love that because I agree with you. Why is very important. I think why is the reason of your living, of your being. Like you talk about your vision, your mission, and then why is your mission, is your
Yeah.
being, why you get up in the morning, what makes you get off the bed in the morning. And that why has to be that strong that it makes you so resilient. So I'm just going to go back to your story. I'm going to ask you, how did your why help you push through some of the mindset shifts or just the hardest moments of your journey, if you can share that with us, and how did
Yeah.
you push through that?
So I'll go back in time just a little bit. As you mentioned, I grew up in the world of professional skiing. So I was a very elite level competitor for a good portion of my younger life. And because of that, I unintentionally was in the best life and business school anyone could ever ask for. I had coaches that were teaching me discipline, accountability, unknowingly resilience and grit. There were consequences for not doing what you say you were going to do or not showing up at your fullest and best potential. And honestly, these are tools that I had no idea at the time. I was very resentful to my coaches for for making me do burpees and ski boots or whatever it may be. But what they were teaching me were invaluable life lessons that I unfortunately would need later in life, because right when I got to the top of my real estate career, at least I felt like it. I was a couple of years into real estate, and I really felt like after having a great mentor and building my client base, I felt unstoppable. Well, unfortunately, no one is unstoppable. And I think anytime we tell the universe what our plan is, God laughs. Unfortunately, life never goes to plan, and it's more about our ability to pivot and
Uh-huh.
and to understand that the best things in life come from the most difficult times in life. And it is the most challenging periods of our lives that we're forced to look inward and to really to find who we are and what we're made of. And I believe that that comes with kind of creating a toolkit of what are the things that are going to help me keep going forward when it doesn't feel possible, whether that's physically or mentally. I think there's a lot of adversity and challenge going on in the world right now, and it is really important for us all to find our why. But not only our why, what are our action steps? What are our tools that we're going to use when we're not feeling good, when we don't feel like getting out of bed? And for me, that's having a really good morning routine. It's having a really good evening routine. It's making sure that, my self-talk is positive, because I'm trying to create neural pathways in my brain that are helping me towards achieving my goals and to getting healthy and to regaining my life, because it is still a constant struggle. But I believe that we all have the tools to get through any adversity that's put in our way. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. But if you find that why, if you find that inner passion, there's nothing that will stop you at the end of the day. And you'll end up learning more about who you are and what you're made of than you ever would else otherwise.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, so I'm going to go back to your journey. So let's talk about mentorship. Mentors are really, really
Yes.
important people in our lives, no matter, what field
Yeah.
you're in every walk of your life. Mentors are really, really important. They play a really, really important role in your life, and especially if you're in some kind of sports, like you're a skier, and then mentors just play a role in a different format, because
Yes.
they'll tell you why you're doing something, what is important, how is important, how to get there, because they're giving you some purpose, some sense into it. So I'm going to ask you this question. So maybe life was preparing you for all the adversities already, going through that, playing the ski or being a skier at that level, or having the proper mentorship in your life, because that might have helped you in your challenging times as well. So let's talk about that,
Yeah.
when you're scared, how the mentorship played a role, how they made you so tough. I know when my kids, they were in school or colleges, when they were playing either golf or football or even, tennis, they didn't like their coaches that much, even for myself too, because there was so much discipline and just like so much focus, concentration. Okay, this is it. The only goal is you're going to be winning. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's the purpose. You have to come number one. So I think there's some underlying purpose to it, or why to it, why you're doing this. So let's talk about that a little bit. So take us to your journey, being a
Yeah.
skier and then working with your mentors, how it mentally prepared you and made you so strong, that you were able to, bounce back so quickly in such a wonderful
Yes.
way.
Well, thank you. I don't think you could be any more spot on with that with that thought, because at the time, like I said, I was a bit resentful towards my coaches because I was, yeah, 15 to 20 years old, and I didn't want to be, if I didn't show up at the exact time I was supposed to, it was going to mean either I was hiking the mountain or doing burpees. There was some sort of consequence for not showing up when I said I was going to. Or if my coaches could tell that I wasn't listening to them, they were keeping me accountable, and they were ensuring that I was going to grow into the best version of myself as an athlete at the time. And I definitely did not have the foresight to understand that they were giving me an invaluable life lesson. And what I really learned is that we go through life, in the driver's seat, thinking that we know, that we're experts, and that we have a really good understanding on what we're doing, and sometimes we can get a little bit too much ego there. But what I've realized through mentorship and coaching is that they're going to be the ones in your life that point out your blind spots. They're going to be the ones looking at your business, your life, everything from above, from an angle that you don't, from a perspective that you don't necessarily have, because
Mhm.
you're in the midst of it. And usually we're running around like crazy people. But mentors and coaches have the ability to show you what your weaknesses are, show you what you should work on developing, and also what you're not good at and what you should delegate. And being a only child and a one person sport, skiing, I had a really difficult time when I started real estate with not wanting to do everything myself. And when I got into real estate, the most important thing for me was finding a mentor. And I was very, very fortunate, as I was able to work under the head of our company. So I followed every move he made. I went with him on appointments to showings. I did his open houses. I'd listen to him on the phone. I would literally just soak in as much as I could. And I think that's one of the best things we can do, is to find someone that we admire, and that means, someone you admire as a person because you agree with their ethos and how they live their life outside of
Mhm.
just business, and how they run their business. And I fortunately found that person my first year in real estate. But since, there have been very few times when I have not had professional coaching, whether it's one or two or three coaches at a time, because if I don't have continual input on how I can continue to be better, which actually ends up empowering you and inspiring you, and once again pushing you towards that why, then I believe you stay stagnant. and the last thing any of us want to do in life is to be stagnant, and mentors and coaches are honestly would allow that. And I think there's a lot to be said about the benefits of athletics. I always laugh and just say it's the best business school I ever went to, but honestly, it was the best life school because it taught me what I'm made of. It taught me that I have an internal grit and a will to keep fighting.
That's true. It's just going beyond your physical limits. So let's talk about resilience. How do you personally define it, and how has your relationship with the resilience changed over time? And definitely wanted to talk about the adversities or the bad timings that you went through. You had multiple surgeries, and you got some disease as well from all the travels that you did to multiple countries. Beside all that, you just bounce back, and then that's what I wanted to know. What was that
Yeah.
right there?
You
Did you
know, it's
judge it?
definitely been a journey. First of all, I laugh because I'm very good at putting on a facade, and I've had to learn and train myself to show up as the healthy person I want to be when really I'm in 24/7 pain. I get 5 plasma transfusions a month. I swear being sick is a second full-time job, unfortunately. But to me, resilience, I always go back and forth between, is resilience something that you are born with, or is resilience something that you build? And I believe that anyone can build resilience simply through finding discipline in your life, and understanding that life is going to present us with challenge no matter what. We're going to be faced with adversity, whether it's a struggling, stock market or real estate market with higher interest rates, or a divorce, or, the loss of a loved one. We all face adversity, unfortunately. And what resilience is to me, is the ability to dig deep. it's it doesn't mean that you shouldn't mourn. I think being able to feel your feelings is very critical. And I went through years of having a deep sadness for feeling that I had lost my identity, my who I really had been my whole life as a very strong, individual that was skiing, 300 days a year. And then I contracted Lyme disease from a tick bite. I've never even seen a tick, like I said. And unfortunately, I was bit at some point, and it took my life from being at the top of my game in real estate. I had just retired from skiing, but I was in peak physical condition, to very quickly barely being able to get out of bed. And I had to go through that process of mourning. But I believe the difference between those who are resilient, or that seek resilience, and those who don't, are, when you're mourning, it's very easy to get stuck there and just kind of get stuck in the mud. And that kind of causes a depression spiral that doesn't serve
Yeah.
you well. So if you're able to, you know, take your mourning and pivot, and understand that, yes, whatever you're going through is, there's no such thing as fair, or, like, of course no one deserves hardships, but it's life, and it's just how life is. And if we have the opportunity to pivot and really use adversity as an opportunity to learn what we're made of, and really dig deep within, and do I really believe that, at least for physical ailments and chronic illness, 50% of that is mental, and it's uncovering what trauma could have occurred in your early life. It's uncovering what limiting beliefs you have, and then it's turning those limiting beliefs into your goals and your affirmations. And you really have to convince your brain, and kind of focus on rewiring your brain into believing that you are, healthy, or you are happy, you are successful, whatever it may be. And that's why I'm such a big supporter of doing morning and evening routines, because I'm writing out every day what my goals are, but I'm writing them in the present tense. And that includes just as simple as I am healthy, pain-free, and full of energy. And it's because you want to train your brain with that resilience. You want to train your brain that the outcome of whatever you're going through is happening. It's, your brain doesn't necessarily know the difference between
Real,
what's
not
real
real.
and not, so if you're telling yourself, oh, I feel horrible, I don't want to do anything, I want to quit my job, I can't do this, your brain's going to listen. So we have to actively make sure that you are disciplined and accountable to whatever activities are going to help you overcome the challenge, and I believe that's resilience.
Yeah, I know. And then you said so many good things. Oh my God, thank you so much. And
Thank
I'm just
you.
gonna highlight few things, You said certain very key things right there. You say you pivot, you need to have a mindset shift. And then you train your mind, you say your brain, but you have to train your mind, in a
Yes.
certain way. You gotta be positive. You have to see the adversity as a challenge, I mean, as an opportunity. Every challenge is an opportunity by the end of the day.
Mhm.
And then you gotta have that grit, you gotta have that why. All those things are really, really good, right? But what happens in reality, let's talk about that too a little bit. In
Yeah.
reality, is some adversity happens or the challenge comes,
Mhm.
people go into their shell, into their cocoon, they completely shut down
Yeah.
because they are facing the adversity without having a clear why. So that's
Yes.
the reason I wanted you to talk about the mentorship or importance of mentorship in your life. Because the
Yeah.
way I hear your story, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because sometimes, like you said earlier, God knows best, or you said
Mhm.
something like that, right?
Mhm.
Like, and there is a saying too, we plan, but I think God implements whatever way is better for us, right?
Yeah.
So, taking that into consideration, when people get into something without having that clear why, it's really, really hard for them to bounce back because they get into that whirlpool. They get
Yes.
sucked into that mode. That's what the depression or stress or no interest in life. And then, bouncing back with all these positive things like pivoting, mindset shift, or having this journaling things, having morning routine, evening routine, meditating, all those things are like far-fetched, basically.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so you might have experienced that firsthand, even though you had a strong, strong preparation before this unknown. You were not preparing for this thing, but life was preparing you by default. Okay, this thing
Yeah.
is going to happen, and she needs to bounce back up. So I would like you to take us through that journey, what
Yeah.
was that actual feeling, emotion, and how you were able to overcome all those feelings, and turn
Absolutely.
into positivity for you.
And like I said, it took me a long time, and I still do have bad days, and it takes a lot of falling on your face
Mhm.
to learn a lesson and to understand what's not working in your life. And I believe that as difficult as it is when to seek light, uh, and when I say seek light, I mean we have such an incredible opportunity living in 2025 to have this access to information that is endless. And for you, it might just be, okay, I'm going through the worst possible situation in my life. Nothing feels good. I just want to stay in bed all day. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to seek help. But what if you just start by listening to a positive podcast once a
Mm-hmm.
day? Or
Mm-hmm.
why don't you start by listening or reading to a personal development book on Audible, or reading one? Why don't you start just by journaling out how you're feeling, what you're going through, and then eventually start writing out, the the life you want to live. Like maybe write yourself a letter 5 years from now that expresses what your life looks like and how you've overcome so much. Like, really, what I learned in skiing was the art of visualization. And I think that goes hand in hand with whether you want to call it manifesting or whether you just want to call that goal setting with actionable steps. But my coaches taught me, if when I was nervous at the top of a run, getting ready to compete, that I would close my eyes and almost get into a meditative state, and I would visualize myself landing every trick on the course that I was about to go down. And I knew that if I could land every trick in my head, even if I hadn't tried it yet, I knew that if I could visualize it, that I would be able to do it on snow, because that's our only time to practice. And I would understand that that nervous energy I had was actually excited energy. And so taking that idea and bringing it into anything you do in life and visualizing yourself getting through whatever adversity you're going through. Spend some time writing down what you want your life to look like. And this can, like we said, nothing will ever go to plan, but if we have an idea of the trajectory of where we would like to go, it's at least getting you up and starting to move towards that trajectory. And that's really where coming and building your toolkit of resilience comes in. What are the things that bring you even the smallest amount of joy? What are the things that bring you motivation or make you feel empowered? What are who are the people that make you feel light and not heavy? And surrounding yourself with these incredible tools that we have, all of which are pretty much free. The access we have today is absolutely incredible. And it did take me many years of going through periods of anger at the world and why is this happening to me? And I was the healthiest individual. How could this be the case? How do I have a port hanging out of my chest? There were a lot, and there still are. There are moments of loss. And I think it is very important to recognize that, but it's much more important to slowly build up your resilience toolkit. And like I said, you don't have to you don't have to do all of these things at once. But if you can start small with, hey, this is my favorite song and it can get me out of bed in the morning, then blast your favorite song and let that be the thing that gets you out of bed. And then let that be the first big goal, and let yourself feel empowered by that. And then set the next one, whether that's going downstairs and writing your affirmations while you drink coffee, whatever it may be. Just take one step at a time. And before you know it, they're going to accumulate into a laundry list of tools that make you more resilient. And you never look back on life and say, I grew so much as an individual when your life was perfect. You look back when times were difficult, and you say, wow, that's the time in my life where I truly learned who I am. And I always say I wouldn't wish what I've been through on anyone, but I would not be the person that I am today had I not gotten Lyme disease. And it's been the most difficult 9 years imaginable, but I have done so much self-work and so much introspection, and created my team of professionals and of people that I work with that are going to inspire me to keep going. So eventually you get to the point where you're, whatever is holding you back, whatever adversity you're facing, actually empowers you to want to find the tools and the people and the why that's going to get you to the other side. And you can use that to empower yourself.
That's true. I agree with you 100%. Oh my God. So the
Yeah.
thing is, you were like, I just feel like you were already trained or you're put on a trajectory to, face all these adversities in your life. You mentioned a very good thing. You said asking the right questions. It's not the right question to ask, why me, and victimize yourself. And it's
Mhm.
like, what next? I mean, I'm in this
Yeah.
challenge and I'm in this mist. How I'm gonna get out? That should be the question. I think that's the question you ask. And you find that space for yourself to pull yourself out. Because sometimes you just need very little help, a very little thing, or very
Mm.
little hope, I would say, or a small why to pull
Yes.
you out of the hole. And once you're out, I think there's no stopping. And then other thing that you mentioned is that I really like about is, like when you were skiing and you're trying to visualize, and visualization is very, very important because I have learned from my experience too that everything in this world happened twice. First
Yeah.
time in your mind, second time outside. Like we were talking earlier, our mind does not know the difference, if it's
No.
real or if you're just visualizing. So if you visualize things, your life, your cooking, your skiing, whatever you want to do in your life,
Yeah.
if you see it clearly, like end to end, how
Yes.
you're preparing, how you're doing it, and when you're gonna doing it, actually, it's gonna be so easy for you.
Yeah.
Because for your mind, it's just like it's a repetition because it did it already, right? So all the hurdles are crossed. I think that's the reason all the mentors, especially in sports, they teach all the players to visualize that, oh, see yourself hitting that goal and then you're gonna make it.
Exactly.
And I mean, that's a really empowerment right there. So I know you're very, very successful as a real estate investor, Tunya. You were telling me earlier that you recently became a developer too, and you develop a new facility that you're looking to sell pretty soon. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that journey now. You were a skier, and then you got through, I don't know, life brought you down, and it's like heartening, I like disheartening to
Yeah.
hear all that, I feel your pain, and then still that grit, the resilience that keep you going despite of everything that you go through, and then you're pushing yourself through. So tell us, how did you start in real estate and how did you build your portfolio,
Yeah.
up to here? And that gives you happiness, right? Basically, that's your why.
Oh, it brings me so much joy, and I was honestly the person that believed real estate agents were like used car salesmen and that it was very transactional. And I couldn't have been more wrong. And my first mentor, the owner of the first company I worked for, I was working as an interior designer after college, and I absolutely love design. My dad is a developer of luxury homes in Breckenridge. My mom does the interior design for his properties. So they
Nice.
say, you end up just like your parents. Well, as much as I didn't think I would, that's exactly where I am, and I couldn't be more grateful. But I had lunch with a dear girlfriend who said, Athena, you love people, you love homes, you love, you love helping people through things, you love design. Why are you not in real estate? And I had lunch with the owner of her company, my future mentor, and he painted this beautiful picture of relationship-based business for me. And he truly taught me that real estate was not about just receiving a check at the end of a closing. It was about creating lifelong relationships with your clients and having them become a part of your life. And my clients truly are. But one of the best pieces of advice he also gave me, and keep in mind I was 23 at the time, so I was very young, but he said, Athena, buy a property, live in it for 2 years, and then rent it out and purchase another property, and then live in it for 2 years, rent it out, and purchase another property. And I never set out in real estate necessarily to be a investor, but something that I knew that I wanted to be, involved in at the very least. And I think having my interior design background really fueled this, was developing beautiful properties in the city that I love so much. I wanted to create, one of a kind special homes that were not just going to fall apart in 2 years, like a lot of these big builders, unfortunately. And developing my real estate portfolio of investment properties, along with working with my financial advisor here in Denver to diversify my portfolio, put me in a position that I had visualized for the majority of my career, the last 10 years, and that was developing homes. I wanted every time that I would assist a client or an investor or a developer with the design of their properties or give input, it was a spark that was ignited within me. And I always knew that I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps, believe it or not, and do what he did, because he always developed in a very conscious way. He was an ecological land planner prior, and really understood how to develop within the environment that you're given, and respecting the environment, but creating really, really special, one of a kind properties. And that doesn't necessarily mean spending a huge amount more money than your competitors. It just means making more thoughtful decisions. And and so I visualized what I've created for the last 10 years. And I would say the last year and a half of my treatments with Lyme disease have probably been the hardest days of my entire life. I mean, I often, think to myself, is this real life? Because it feels so horrible. And what has kept me going is the fact that I am involved in creating something that is beautiful and that I'm passionate about, with a team that I trust implicitly. And I think building your team in anything you do in life is absolutely critical to your happiness and to
Mhm.
getting you out of the mud. And I
Mhm.
created a team around me of individuals that I want to work with for the rest of my life. But my first luxury property is just going on the market. We're listing right around 2 million, and it's a dream come true, and it's a visualization come true. And it's something that has brought me more joy and more excitement to get out of bed every day when I'm going through one of the most difficult treatments. Most people do go on disability and go on bed rest for the majority of what I've been going through for, about 8.5 years. And I truly believe that having these glimmers of hope and having these things to get out of bed for at the end of the day, like what do you
That's true.
love?
Mhm.
What gets you out of
Uh,
bed?
yeah. That's really important. And I would like to congratulate you for that mindset, for that resilience, that grit, that power within you about that. Because that's what is making you go, and then creating this real estate portfolio and keep going. Wow, kudos to you, girl. And I wanted to ask you one last question over here. I know we're out of time, but your story is so powerful. I wanted to keep on going.
Thank
For
you.
someone listening who is in the middle of his or her tough chapter, what's one piece of advice that you like to give it to somebody for their inner strength, inner power, like try to redefine themselves or rediscover themselves,
Yeah.
Those are the only words come to my mind because we have a choice to redefine ourselves every moment of our life. But most of the time, we just overlook or ignore that.
Yeah, honestly, and you do, it's a continual reinvention. And I think that if we're staying stagnant and not evolving, through adversity that we're doing ourselves and the world a disservice. And I think oftentimes when you are going through something challenging, the idea of trying to turn your life around and pivot everything at once can be so overwhelming that it keeps people from moving in the right direction. And I would say start small. Write
Small.
out, yeah, write out everything in your that you're feeling. Get everything out on paper, your limiting beliefs, the pain that you're going through, whatever it may be. Write it out and then rip it out of your journal, crumple it up, light it on fire if you want. That
I
does
know
not serve you anymore. You do not, that does not serve you. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's getting it out on paper and then write down a vision of what you see yourself doing 5 years from now. And write it in the present tense. Like, I'm so grateful that I am married to the man of my dreams, and my health feels, is at its peak. I feel incredible. My real estate career is doing well. I'm selling, and get really specific. Like, for me, what is the volume I'm selling? How many properties am I developing a year? What type of properties am I developing? What qualities am I looking for in a partner? But just start creating a vision for yourself to go back to. Because if you don't have an idea of where you want to go, there's nothing that's going to pull you out.
I agree on that. And then I think it's just like you wanted to take the creator seat and create your life. When I say redefine, basically, you just wanted to start writing your own story the way you want it and see it in your mind first, your whole story.
Yeah.
Find your present where you are, find your future address where you want it to go, get
Yeah.
your GPS system going. I can't say that enough. I say that all the time.
I love
Because
it.
once you know your present state and you know where you want to be 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you know your future address, it's going to be super easy to find your GPS. Trust me on that. So this
I
brings us
love
to
that.
our, thank you. So this brings us to our vibe rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to
Deal.
answer it in one word or one sentence only. Okay. Are you ready?
Hmm.
Okay. I think you shared with us so much, but I'm still going to ask you this question. Share with us one important thing that you've learned in your life, and how did your life change after learning it?
Uh, I read Atomic Habits, and my goal is now just to be 1% better every single day.
Oh, I love that. I seriously love that. I kind of resonate with
1%.
you. I kind of resonate. My goal every day is I wanted to learn something new every day. And the
Oh,
day I don't learn anything new, I just feel like my day is wasted.
I
Even no
love that.
matter how big is it or how small it is, because it
Mhm.
just creates another new neuron in your mind, in your brain. So it's like a
Exactly.
pathway, basically, you're expanding. So
Yeah.
share one good book that you would like to recommend to my audience.
Honestly, Atomic Habits.
I love that book.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. I've read it a few times now.
That's true. In one word, what does life mean to you?
Man, in one word, relationship.
That's a good one. I mean, that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah,
Connect with each other and help each other grow.
it's the most important thing to me, honestly, is
That's true.
relationship.
That's the purpose of my life too. So what
Yeah,
is your biggest passion?
music and real estate.
Nice. I love that. If you could turn
Mhm.
back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself and why?
I think about this a lot. And it makes me very emotional, honestly, whenever I do, but I would let little Athena know that she could overcome any challenges that were coming, because life was going to present challenges, but that everything was going to be okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the
Yeah.
best advice. So how can people reach out to you, Athena?
Yeah, so everyone, please feel free to reach out whether you need advice on real estate or just getting through something difficult. I don't bite. You can get all of my contact information on my website, which is just www.athenabrownson.realtor, and I'll spell that ATHENA BROWNSONREALTOR.com. I'd love to chat.
Thank you so much, Athena. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Real Estate Vibe Show. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with anyone looking to elevate their real estate investing game. Until next time, stay focused, stay inspired, and keep building your real estate vibe. Thanks again.